I'm going to show you an incredibly easy fix for the no power issue, as well as how to resolve the power light blinking endlessly fault. First, let's cover the no power fault. When I first plug in the NAS device, I do get my green light on the power brick indicating we are getting power, but when I press the power button, nothing happens. I don't get my blue light. Now, sometimes it doesn't always work. If I keep repeatedly pressing the power button, it does eventually turn on. So let's go ahead and take it apart and find out why. We're going to start by removing the disk trays. And we're going to flip the unit to check out the back. We're going to start by unscrewing these two screws here and here. We're going to flip this over upside down. And then we just gently wiggle it out. We're going to flip it around, and we're going to remove this screw next. And we'll flip it one more time. Remove this one. Now this module will wiggle out. And we'll just disconnect the connectors here. Next, we're going to be removing this screw and this screw, as well as the equivalents over here and over here. And we want to be gentle here because we're going to be disconnecting a PCIe connection. So you're going to be wiggling out right there. And now we're going to remove these screws. And the board should lift right out. We have a little tape over here. Be gentle. Our final step is removing the back plates. So we'll remove these screws in the front. We're going to have a little treat near the end of the video, which is I noticed over here on the underside of the Ethernet ports here, we have a reset button, which was found loose inside of the Synology device as we were removing the motherboard. Looks like the previous owner was trying to very aggressively reset the device and physically damaged it. So at the end of the video, we'll go ahead and resolder it as a little bonus. Now for the extremely easy fix, we're going to be swapping out the battery. So to remove it, we're going to be on this little piece of plastic here and here. We're going to be pushing them away from each other and down. At the same time, I'm going to be lifting the battery out with my little tool. There we go. And we're going to do a quick little voltage check to make sure it is indeed defective. So in DC volts, we're going to put positive to positive, negative to ground, and we get 1.09 volts. This is going to be our replacement battery, and on that one, we get 3.26. Perfect. Let's go ahead and put the new one in. Just gonna push it in. Perfect. If this resolved the issue with your NAS device, I still highly recommend you keep watching because this issue might not have occurred yet, but it will very soon if you don't do this next repair. The second common fault we see is when we plug it in and we power it up. We do have our blue blinking light, but we also have the disk light that light up orange. That's not supposed to happen. We leave it on and let it do its thing. It's going to eventually shut off after a couple minutes. Okay, it just shut off on us. In order to resolve this issue, we are also going to need to remove the motherboard, and this time around we're going to be doing some soldering work to it. The root cause of this malfunction is the well-known and documented Atom C2000 bug, which is essentially a clock signal line fault. In order to resolve the issue, we're going to need to install a resistor onto the motherboard. The factory authorized repair we're going to be performing is a 100 ohm resistor will be installed connecting pin number 1 right here to pin number 6 over here. So let's go ahead and do that. Bend the pins, and then we're going to be soldering the resistor down from the back side of the board. And there we go. Easy as that. Go ahead and cut off the excess. And now we're back to live testing. So now we have the new battery installed as well as our resistor. Let's go ahead and plug it in and we'll do one more check. So one thing I'm going to notice immediately that's a little different is we only have the blue light. We no longer have the orange status light that was present earlier. And we'll wait a little bit for it to fully initialize. And we now have our green status light. And we just got a little beep. Now, as promised, we have our little bonus. We're going to be resoldering the physically damaged or broken off reset button. I'm going to start by removing all of the old solder on the joints, just like that. And I'm using desolder wick. The desolder wick does have flux on it, so that's why we have a little residue. I'm going to go ahead and clean that off. Now, the tricky part to install this reset switch is we have two very small little legs right here and right there. That'll connect here and here. And then we have our large ground pad over here. That should be easy to connect. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with locking it down on the ground pads first, and then we're going to go ahead and solder those little legs down to the board. So to do that, I'm going to start by adding a little blob of solder right here. And while melting the solder, I'm going to slide the switch into place very carefully. Okay, and it is now locked in. I'm going to lock in the other side now. And actually, I think it's sitting not quite flush, so I'm going to press down on it as I melt it. There we go. And our last ground pad on the back in the center. Now, to make it a little easier to see, I did put a little bit of an angle on the board and I zoomed in a little bit more. One of the things I did off camera is I switched my tip. So now I have a different soldering iron tip that's a lot thinner and more accurate. And I'm going to use it to tack down those 2 pins. And you know what? I'm having a little bit of a hard time. One thing I'm going to do is add some new flux. And because this is a smaller iron tip, it's going to have a little bit of a harder time transferring heat. I'm going to have to hang on the joint, I think, for a little longer to make sure we get good heat transfer. And that is just an ugly looking joint. I am not happy with it at all. I'm going to do a little bit of hot air right now, just low heat. I'm not actually trying to solder anything, but the reason I'm doing this is just to kind of warm up some of the pads and the board in general so that it's a little easier for me to solder with that very fine iron tip. Okay, there we go. So I'm getting a lot better flow now. All right, and I think that actually should do it. Let's go ahead and clean it up and we'll do another inspection with a better angle with the microscope. All right, and this is about as close as I can get without making it a little too zoomed in, but to me, it looks like we actually have really good contact. So I think we're all set here. We'll do another live test just to check and make sure that when we press that reset button, it does work and it activates. Otherwise, I think we're all set here. So we finished connecting everything up. We have our disk 1 is currently being detected, and we were able to find the device on our network, and we're now at the setup screen. So let's go ahead and press that reset button. Perfect.